From Ride the West Horse Expo in Spokane, Washington, Reinsman presents a 13-week series with Sharon Camarillo. This week we join Sharon for part 1 of her bidding clinic.
It's important when the rider is selecting a bridle to use on their horse that they understand that this will be the communication between the rider and the horse. How is the bit designed to work? The pressure points that it'll affect, how to adjust the piece of equipment, and most important, what do you want to get accomplished? These are all factors in making responsible decisions in bridle selection. Bits are designed to control a horse by utilizing pressure. Let's look at some of those pressure points. The tongue, the lip, also the bar area which lies between the incisors and the molars. If you've got a ported bit, 2 inches or taller, you can use the roof of the horse's mouth or the palate. When we talk about pressure on the outside of the horse's head, we're going to utilize the chin groove, the jaw, the nose, and we can drop down for pressure in the softer area, lower on the horse's nose, above the eye, and the poll. Keep in mind that when you're selecting a bit for your horse that it's an aid in the communication between the horse and rider. It's a tool and it's only as effective as the knowledgeable rider using it. Keep in mind that consistency in cues, the pressure release concept, reward and discipline are all true tools in successful training and communication between the horse and rider. We're going to talk a little bit about bits and bidding today. And I think in so many cases we have a tendency to skip over the process in a hurry to get to the discipline. And in doing so, we're not creating a foundation to take our horses into the high school collegiate disciplines of timed eventing. And specifically, we may be talking about barrel racing, but overall a timed event is a timed event, and it's a process of being judged only by a stopwatch. So the choice that we use in equipment is our own. What are we going to be able to control the horse with at a high rate of speed to work on consistency, to work on efficiency, that make those fast times? Consistent performance is going to be critical in our success. So I'm going to go back to something I read from the great coach Vince Lombardi. And when his team came into summer training, he walked in and all of them sat there with bated breath, assuming that he was going to come out with something profound about football. And what he did is he held up a football and he said, "Okay, boys, this is a football, and we're going back to basics." So each one of you as horsemen and horsewomen, even though I've got a series of bridles on the fence, what I'm going to say is, "Okay, class, this is a Snaffle bit, and we're going to go back to basics." Whether you're riding a 2-year-old or a 6-year-old or an 18-year-old horse, I'm going to say that my horses are forever in the resource that the Snaffle bit provides. Whether it be training as a young horse, remedial repair as an older horse, or just suppling and relaxation as in a performance horse. So this is the basic of our foundation, this is your Snaffle bit. And I want to spend a little time talking about the varieties or the choices that you have in snaffles, because each one of you need to take the responsibility to learn enough about your horse to figure out what he needs, because in reality the bit is the communication between your hands and the horse. Even though it's a very small key to the entire picture, a very small piece in the entire puzzle, the bit is one of the keys in being able to have you maintain control, connection, and collection of your animal. So when we're talking about bits, we're really talking about the entire package. Very important. This is an O-ring snaffle, and it will work off of 3 pressure points: your tongue, your lip, and the bar. It has a curb strap on it, but a basic ring snaffle or a D-ring snaffle is not designed to put that fourth element of pressure on the curb. All the curb strap is for in a snaffle bit would be to help the bit itself stay centered in the horse's mouth and to avoid the rider's ability to pull the bit through the horse's mouth if he's opening it. So our basic ring snaffle is going to control a horse with 3 different pressure points: the tongue, the lip, and the bar. So how this is adjusted on the horse's face is going to be important in the control and the connection that you'll be able to achieve from the rider's hands through the reins to the communication of the bit. Your O-ring snaffle is going to be a more suppling piece of equipment than your D-ring. The D-ring is still a very essential and important piece of training equipment. It's a little quicker. But what you'll see that my bridles have in common is the fact that the weight factor, the quality of the manufacturing, and the element of materials keep the selection of bridles uniform. I like a sweet iron or a copper. It stimulates saliva in a horse's mouth. And when you've got your horses salivating, then you're going to keep the mouth lubricated. So all those are important. And when you go in to purchase a piece of equipment, I know that your stainless steel equipment is going to be a little less expensive. Many times it's not American made, and the stainless steel is a drying element. So through experience, and those of you who've ridden a lot of horses, you know, when you see that white foam around your horse's mouth, that's a good thing. That horse is working his jaw and he's keeping that mouth supple, light, and that saliva is keeping a horse's mouth lubricated. So your O-ring snaffle, this is a twisted mouthpiece. On the horses 3, 4, 5-year-old and on, I would probably suggest that your twist is going to give you just a little more contact to the bar, the tongue, and the lip. Because the snaffle is designed to be ridden laterally, left to right, to create that nice lateral flexion on a horse. And once we get our horses laterally flexible, then we can start working them longitudinally flexible. I've got a slinky here, and I just want to demonstrate with this visual aid the importance of creating that lateral suppleness. So from the neck through the shoulder, the rib cage, and the hip, the loin, we want that horse to be nice and laterally soft, laterally flexible. Once he's laterally flexible, then we can start getting him longitudinally flexible, and that would be through the loin, the back, the neck, and the pole. So we really want these horses handleable. Down from the feet, up through the horse's spine, through his neck, through his pole, down to his face, back through the reins to the rider's hands. We want to work to get that horse on the bridle, on the bit, where he's not intimidated by the bridle. We don't want him to behind the bit. We lose connection and communication, nor do we want him apprehensively running through it. This little horse that we've got in now is a remedial horse. She's a 6-year-old Beduino, and she's come off the track for our timed event, speed event of barrel racing. There is an advantage in getting a horse off the track because obviously they've been taught to learn to run with a rider on their back. They've also been handled quite a bit, and they've been around in an environment that there is some visual stimulation. So in many cases you have an advantage getting a horse off the track, but keep in mind that the horse is usually not broke and has very little foundation. And riders have a tendency to spend a lot of money on these nice bred horses, and all of a sudden start trying to figure out how to control them. The horse has never been taught to be on the bit. He's been taught to run through the bridle. And all of a sudden you're saying, well, I can't control this horse. So this little cowgirl right here has been back in training, and I think as you watch us do our demonstrations throughout the weekend that you'll see some really nice things that Cheryl is putting together on her. But she's got a snaffle on her. And where this is a twisted O-ring snaffle, this mare, because she has a tendency to overtuck, drop her jaw into her chest, and get behind the bridle, causing the rider to lose connection, we've wanted to create some type of stimulation through a choice of bridle to allow her to elevate her pole and put her nose back out to carry that bridle. Again, when we're talking about pressure points, the lip, the bar, and the tongue, to utilize the control that these bits are going to give us, if a horse is dropping that chin down behind the bridle, we're losing complete connection and control of the horse. So we want her confident enough that she'll just put her nose out a little bit, eyes forward, and she can see where she's going. And we really want to avoid getting a horse where they're behind the bridle, where she drops her pole, tucks her chin to her chest, gets behind the bridle. And what happens is the horse's weight drops heavy on the forehand, and the horse is basically running away with you. Even at a walk, the horse is running away with you. So we've taken the design of a basic O-ring, and you can see little hangers here in the O-ring, and we've lifted the mouthpiece up, taken the pressure off the bar and the lower lip and put it back toward the crease of the lip so she can put her nose out and the snaffle won't fall and collapse against the tongue. And you can see whenever the rider pulls on the reins of a snaffle what the pressure point's doing. The bit itself is collapsing. We're putting pressure on the tongue, the bar, and then with a little lateral control from the rider's hands down through the reins to the bit, we've got some connection with the corners of the horse's mouth. And this type of a bridle, your basic O-ring single twist, has a tendency to really put a lot of pressure down on the lip and bar of your horse and tongue. So their natural tendency is to try to escape or get away from pressure. What do? They start dropping that jaw down, and you all have probably ridden horses that want to drop that jaw and get away from you. You know, sometimes we misinterpret it as a good headset, but what we're doing is we're getting our horses behind the bridle. And if each one of you would take just a second, take your chins and drop them down to your chest, all the way down to your chest. You feel how that kind of tips you forward? Puts that horse's weight on the forehand. And then if I said keep it there, and we're going to race down the end of this hallway and back, you might be apprehensive and really getting a nice long stride, wouldn't you? So I want these barrel horses with their poles up, their chins out, eyes forward, really create a nice long stride, working on that connection and communication between the horse and rider, with our snaffle bit really being the foundation of everything we talk about. The second largest city in Washington, Spokane is known for its warm and friendly people. Just a few short miles from Ride with the West is one of Spokane's most historic buildings, this 1874 flour mill. It's a home now to some terrific restaurants, one in which has a really unique theme. Dave Wagner started out with a picture of his father on the wall, a fallen Vietnam vet. That triggered other people around the Spokane area and tourists alike to bring in their memorabilia. Throughout history, the horse has always been a symbol of freedom. Without being too patriotic, I have to say we live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, which gives us the opportunity to pursue our dreams and goals. So as we go back out and experience the freedom of the horse, let's not forget those that have made it possible. In many cases, we're getting these horses, whether they're race horses behind, wanting to tuck behind the bit, sometimes an over-broke reining horse that's too supple in the pole. We need to get that nose back out. We may have to mechanically manipulate that headset. This is a little gag bit. And in many cases, I'm very apprehensive about introducing a gag bit to the barrel racing population, because I think we've misinterpreted, I know I did earlier on, and we've misused it to get a lot of, and in most cases too much, lateral flexion, and especially from the shoulder to the pole. So we're getting our horses bent in two, because we do have the ability with this gag type snaffle to get a lot of lateral control. But I've noticed that the reiners are using the little gag snaffles to be able to elevate the pole, place the nose, create the lateral suppleness and also work on that suppleness down the spine, that longitudinal suppleness that I was talking about. Here you've got a 3-piece mouthpiece, which is a little different than our twisted mouthpiece. And some of those horses that get claustrophobic when their tongues are held down by a traditional 2-piece snaffle, this 3rd piece offers a little tongue relief. Also, you'll see some of those horses that have a real thick tongue, and in a natural relaxed position, that tongue raises higher than your lower molars. You certainly may want to give them the resource of a tongue relief bit, whether it's an O-ring as you see here, a dog bone, a 3rd piece in any shape will give that horse a little tongue relief. Now, instead of a twisted snaffle, you do see that this one's got a copper wrap, but again, the weight is there, the element of design is there, and the quality is there. Your copper will stimulate your horse's ability to salivate. When we leave a clinic, so many times, I'm apprehensive in knowing that I've created the idea or the concept, philosophy of a foundation, and I'm leaving my riders with a snaffle bit. It has direct control, it has no leverage because there's no shank or curve bit, and I know the state of our horses in many cases are out of control, and our riders, just because of sheer nature, don't have the experience to know what to do to be able to bring those horses back into control. You know, in today's age, our horses are luxuries. They're not necessities as they were in the early part of our century. They're no longer in need for transportation on horses, and we live in such a wonderful country that gives us the opportunity to seek our dreams and goals, and we have passions to have a communication with these wonderful animals. Well, we've, you know, again, have that spare time and that extra money to be able to go out and do that. But our horses still need to know that there is a point of communication, and at times while you're getting to that communication, while you're building your initial innate knowledge of how to control your horses, we need a little more control than what the snaffle bit offers. And although it's not rocket science in learning how to use a snaffle bit, there are some methodical skills that are very important to understand, know, practice, to know how to control your horses. So we've redesigned the basic ring snaffle, and what we do is now create a little bit of curb pressure while still maintaining the all-important direct control. Why do we want direct control in our foundation equipment? Because we need to go straight to the horse's mouth, again, to work on that important suppleness laterally, the longitudinal suppleness across the spine, pole, and neck, and in doing so, we're starting to maintain and get control of our horses. Once we have that control in that foundational area, then we can go into our shank equipment. But before that, we want to get direct control to the horse's mouth to work on our suppleness, both laterally and longitudinally. This is the 6-bit, and it includes a 4th area of pressure control to the jaw. We're seeing that a lot of the horses that come into clinics are overtucked. And that's a contradiction, because if I'm riding reining horses, the judge wants to see a horse's nose in a vertical position. So they're getting a lower pole and a headset where the nose of the horse is vertical to the ground. And an uneducated rider is not going to realize that they're lacking control because the horse now with the drop pole has the weight shifted on the forehand, and with that tucked nose he's looking down instead of out, and the weight shifted too heavy on the front end. So what we've got to do is somewhat confuse the horse and rider for a short period of time and get them to elevate their hands to recreate a headset. Elevate their hands by taking hold of the rein. When you take a hold of the rein, it affects the pressure points that the bridles are designed to control the horse with. And in doing so, we can replace the horse's nose elevated off their chest. And I found that the little 6-bit that has the addition of a nose band, so now we have a 5th area of pressure from the tongue, the lip, the bar, the chin, and the nose to be able to reestablish a balanced position for a horse's head to be in. Now, the head is really about the last thing that you really want to focus in on, because you can't steer a horse unless his feet are moving. So the impulsion, the forward motion, comes from the horse's hind end, from his feet, up through his loin, through his back, to his poll, to his face, forward motion. Once he's moving, then you can start to steer him. Once he's moving, then you can steer him and rebalance his head. So the bridle certainly is not the answer, but a responsible rider-trainer needs to select a bridle that's going to give them the opportunity, the control, the connection to be able to provide the essential foundation to put the balance into your horse. Now I'm going to put some responsibility on each one of you, because I'm going to introduce something that initially looks quite severe. It's called a bumper bit. There's 4 elements of control. The snaffle bit offers tongue, lip, and bar. It's got a hanger, so we're taking away some of the lip or the tongue pressure. The pressure now is replaced by a bar at the nose. So I want this horse to be confident to elevate his nose, push it out, but those horses that are really pushy, none of you have any of those, do you? Especially when we decide we're going to be a barrel racing horse and we buy a horse off the track and all he knows is to run forward at a high rate of speed ahead of the bridle, and you're going, I think I need to slow this horse down. This is a wonderful piece of equipment to tune up a heavy-faced, running-away barrel horse. It's a nice piece of equipment on some of those younger horses that you can't laterally bring back and balance, because it readjusts the pressure that we're being able to control our horse by. It's called a bumper. I only like to leave it on a horse for a couple of days at a time. And again, it's taking the responsibility of the bridle, putting pressure on the horse's mouth, replacing it by putting the pressure on the horse's nose to be able to vertically bring a horse's back to us. As a professional barrel racer, I know that at times I'm on the road for 2 or 3 months. And that July run comes, and then the August run, and all we're worrying about is speed and fast times to get those good checks and a position in the standings. And about August and September, golly, I feel like this horse is nitro propelled, and I really need to bring him back. At that time is when I'll put something like this on just to lighten him up, reminding that I am in control and that I don't want him that far ahead of the bridle. Bumper bit.
Reinsman is proud to bring you this 13-week series of Sharon Camarillo's Barrel Racing Clinic from Ride the West. Visit us at www.reinsman.com. For more information on Sharon's horsemanship and barrel racing clinics, visit her at www.sharoncamarillo.com. Next week, Sharon will continue her discussion on bitting the performance horse. So please join us again next week right here on Horse TV. The Sharon Camarillo series is produced by Advent Communications. Contact us at clinictv@aol.com.